Oh, and Whitney?
We're about to start.
By the way, I don't know if you know, my last name is pronounced Lynde. Most people don't
Fine.
say it that way. So I thought, well, I'll give you a heads up.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our first Thread Talk of our final day of the 2020 Spinning and Weaving Week. We are thrilled to have another 3 wonderful presenters with us for this hour. But before we jump into that, I do want to highlight the remainder of our wonderful schedule. We have one more Thread Talk at 1 p.m. Eastern, followed by a 2 p.m. Eastern Strut Your Stuff Informal Fashion Show. And then we close the day with 2 Marketplace Lives, one at 3 p.m. Eastern featuring Susan's Fiber, and a 4 p.m. Eastern with John C. Campbell Folk School. And we'll also be featuring Tommy Scanlon during that hour. And then again, we wrap up this week's events with closing remarks featuring our Executive Director, Elizabeth Williamson. For our first speaker in this edition of Thread Talks, we have Robin Lynde, and she is going to be giving us a presentation on Jacob sheep and their fiber. I am now going to turn it over to you, Robin.
Okay, good morning. All right, now, well, here I am. There I am in my messy office. But I am going to switch right over to some slides. And I just have to go to play, and there we go. All right, so I raised Jacob's sheep.
Hey, Robin, we're not seeing them yet.
You're not?
At the bottom, do you see a share screen button?
I just took, oh, geez. No, let me escape from this now. Back to the Zoom.
The Zoom window, do you see share screen at the bottom?
Zoom, there's Zoom. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. We even practiced this, didn't we?
All right. It's okay, it's technology. We were having internet issues, so it's okay.
Okay, are we good now?
We see your email, so just minimize the email and then we'll see the.
Okay, and okay, so you're seeing my power. Okay, I'm gonna go to play then.
Perfect.
There we go.
Yes, we're good.
Okay, so anyway, as the sign on the road says, I raise Jacob sheep, I sell wool, I have classes, and there's a lot more. And my goal with this program is to talk about the sheep and why you as fiber enthusiasts might want to know something about Jacob sheep. So, and this is actually, that's not a sheep, that's my border collie. I did want to point out that I'm a sheep farmer, I am a weaver, I have a store on the farm, and I do lots of education, not only for weaving and spinning, but kids and all about raising animals and agriculture. So we're going to move right on, and this is a slideshow that I've given to guilds for guild presentations, and I can talk for a long time, and it can go quite longer than 15 minutes. So I'm going to breeze through a lot of this, and I tried to consolidate. So I've been raising sheep for about 20 years, and the Jacob sheep is quite different than what most people think of when they think of sheep. One of the most striking things are the horns. And notice that they can have more than 2, so that's unusual. This is some of the rams. Look at the size of those ram horns. The sheep I showed you before were ewes, or the females. The rams grow horns that are quite large. There can be a 2-horn sheep like the guy at the top. It looks more like your bighorn sheep configuration. And then the 4-horn sheep have 2 that go up or out and 2 that go down. So I have a few more ram pictures here. A young ram, an older ram, only 3 years old though. The horns grow quite quickly. The other thing that's different about them is that they're spotted. Okay, so we get all this beautiful natural colored fleece off of one sheep. There are 2 color variations. These are recently shorn rams, black on the left, what's called lilac on the right. And the lilac, if you see a sheep and you're unsure of the color of a Jacob sheep, the facial markings that are in the hair indicate what color the sheep truly is. Because sometimes sheep may look brown. The guy on the right, people would say that's brown, not black. But when you look next to his skin, it's going to be black. The brown comes from sun bleaching. So my black yarn is always got shades of brown in it. That's the lilac on the left and the black and white on the right. And just here's how quickly they grow. That's a ram as he's growing up, and that's only at a couple years old how big his horns have gotten. So now that you've seen some pictures of the sheep, I'm going to tell you a little bit about raising them and what I do as far as fiber production. This is one of the most exciting times of year because it's not like we're starting all over again. This October 1st is when the rams went out with the ewes. And probably 2/3 of my ewes are already marked, and this is what, less than 2 weeks from that. So there's one of the rams out with his ewes. There's another ram. That's Tamarisk. And here's what it looks like. This is my version of fall colors because the rams wear a marking harness. Here, I think I can show you. He's got a harness on his chest, and there's a marker on the front, on the bottom. And so when he breeds the ewes, they get marked. And after 2 weeks, we change the color of the marker because that will indicate if those ewes have cycled and they've come into heat again. Hopefully none of these will come into heat again and they're all bred and pregnant. And then we move on to our next season, which is lambing season. But in between, we have shearing day. And that's a big deal out here. So we shear about the first weekend of February. And I do that because then lambing is so simple. All the ewes fit in the barn easily. You can see what's going on with them. The lamb, you don't risk having a lamb sucking on a dirty old tag of wool underneath them. You can see if the lambs can find the udder. It just makes everything just clean and easy, and the fleeces are in really good shape. So lambing season, 5 months from now. I know where I'll be March 1st. Heavily pregnant ewe there. And I just have some kind of cute pictures of lambs here because I'm going to breeze through this, like I said, because I can't take way too much time. So this is what I do for about 3 or 4 or 5 weeks in March, is I spend a lot of time in the barn watching for lambs. Oh, and speaking of horns, I threw this picture in because that's a newborn lamb there, the 2 of them. And look at, that's a 2-horn ram lamb. You can see how big those horns are even when they're born. If any of you are, well, you can imagine that might be a struggle for a ewe sometimes at birth, but okay, there's another cute baby lamb picture, and there's another. Okay, I'm going to breeze through a few more of these pictures. This is what I do. I like taking my camera to the barn. I hang around watching the sheep. I tell people that buy sheep from me for the first time that one of the best ways to learn about raising sheep, learn about how to know if there's a problem, is you just have to watch. You have to watch them a lot and learn what the normal behavior is like, and then you can pick out something that's not normal. This is normal behavior for lambs. Okay, so I do a lot of education at the farm. And this is in the spring is when I normally would have lots of people out here. I do field trips for schools, for classrooms. I do, well, we have some, Meet the Sheep is an annual open house. And of course, this year, all of this stuff was canceled, unfortunately. And I'm hoping, I don't know what will be for next year, but I do a lot of public education, partly because there's such a demand for it. And my farm is only about, 45 minutes from Sacramento and an hour from the Bay Area. And so I'm right in the midst of lots and lots of people that really value coming out and having a farm experience, or at least seeing what's on a farm. One of the smartest things I ever did, well, there's another Meet the Sheep picture. One of the smartest things, oh wait, all right, this picture got thrown in here because it's another public event. And this should be happening right now. Usually the last weekend of October, we have Hug a Sheep Day. Well, we can't do that this year, unfortunately. So another more public education. All right, Farm Club, that's what I wanted to tell you about. So Farm Club is the smartest thing I ever thought up. And I think we've been going maybe about 12 years now. And it's a group of people that want to learn more about raising sheep. They may think they're going to have a few sheep when they retire. They might want to have sheep as pets. They may think, gee, I could go into the business of raising sheep. Or they may be, most of them come at it from a fiber interest. They're spinners or knitters, and they are and they love the Jacob fleece, and they're intrigued about how it's raised, and they really value coming out to the farm. Some of them are members for years and years, partly because they just really want to support a local farm, and they know that it takes a lot of support financially and well, hopefully somewhat financially, but a lot of labor also. And so they're willing to come and pitch in, but what they're getting out of it is the learning aspect that they're getting. And so they get a hands-on aspect. on the farm. This was shearing day a couple years ago. But during lambing season, they get access to, they can come out anytime they want, watch for lambs, help me. So that's been a really positive thing for me to do and made me a lot of friends. They can get as involved in the sheep as they want to. Some people just want to handle the clipboard. Other people get in there and they've learned to show sheep even. They go to the state fair and help show sheep. They go to Black Sheep Gathering and help show sheep. What else was I going to say about that? Oh, I know. And now what I did start a few years ago was a cyber fiber farm club, which now in these days of COVID, there's kind of a lot of overlap, because there was the local people that could come out to the farm, and then there was the cyber group, which gets Facebook Live posts and emails and stuff like that. And there seems to be a lot of overlap now, because even the local people aren't coming out as much, and they value the Facebook Live parts. And the other people value the emails. I email quite a bit during the week. The idea of this is that they learn about sheep on a behind the scenes basis, and they hear the things that go wrong and the pitfalls and everything that I'm doing. So that's Farm Club. And I mentioned education. That was all on-farm education. This Farm Club has helped me with this a lot at the state fair, which was canceled for this year. For several years, I've won this marketing program, which is really based on the extent to which you promote, well, the education aspect of the farm, and what we spend a lot of time talking with people at the state fair with the sheep there. Okay, so you're here about fiber though, or at least that's why you're doing what you're doing. So here's some pictures of some of the fleeces. I want to check checking my time. Okay, so here's typical Jacob fleeces. This is Farm Club coming out a week or two before shearing day, because they get to choose their fleece. Some people are fleece members, some are lamb members, there's different membership levels, but they get to preview the fleeces and choose them. So there's what a fleece looks like. And if you're a fiber enthusiast, or if you're a spinner, you're thinking, oh, those look pretty luscious right now. So I sell some fleeces right on shearing day. Others, what's left, I sort into different colors and I send to a mill, and I get sliver or roving to sell. I have some of it made into yarn, and here's where you see the colors of the Jacob sheep shine, because you have a lot of, you can separate them and spin them all separately, do something like this, like the 2-ply yarn there. You can have a variegated yarn by just taking those colors randomly as they come. And there's some of the look of my shop. There's my own Jacob fiber, plus there's some from another local farm that I have milled. It's a Rambouillet Polypay Targhee blend, and it's a fabulous yarn. It's called the Tim Ranch yarn. And sometimes I blend that with my Jacob and get a gray yarn. And this stuff's all on my website, by the way, if you're interested. Although right now I'm low on everything. Okay, and I am a weaver, so what I really love to do is weave blankets with this natural colored fiber, and there's some samples of them. More blankets. Some I use hand spun. I like to use a mixed warp. It really shows off all the different colors of the Jacob sheep. And a few garments. There's some more hand spun. So here's a typical hand spun piece that just takes advantage of those different colors and letting it come in random order. That's what I like to do best. Although there's some that's been spun, obviously separating the colors. This is a Farm Club member who made that. That's a 3-ply yarn that she made that shawl, that vest, specifically to replace a vest that was the oil-based, fake fleece type of vest. Anyway, she took advantage of all the Jacob colors there. Oh, and so if you're raising sheep, you end up, if I'm having lambs every year, there's always going to be some that are sold for butcher. But I also process the pelts for lambskins, and I make buttons out of the horns. And here's just a couple more pretty pictures of sheep. This is what our place looks like. This last few months, I couldn't see the hills back there at all because it was so smoke filled for 6 weeks probably. There was so much smoke here. We are in an area that does not burn, but those hills burn. So some of the principles, there's just a couple more pictures here because I think I'm about out of time. We try to do the best that we can for our sheep and for the environment, and these are some of the things that we do. Intensive grazing helps with pasture management. What they call low stress handling techniques means that your sheep are not necessarily afraid of you. Now, not all of them are pets, but that we do have a big pet. That's my granddaughter a few years ago. That's our most favorite pet sheep. And I just had to throw this picture in. That was last year at the state fair, and my granddaughter with her lamb. She lives in Texas, but I saved this lamb out for her, and we trained it, and she came out and worked with it. And you know, everybody's after the blue ribbon, but hey, when you're a 5-year-old little girl, pink is the best color ribbon to get. So I think that's it. And because I think I'm out of time. I just put the website down there and my email. I am glad to answer any questions by email or phone, or if there's a way to forward questions from after this presentation to me. I like talking about sheep. I like talking about weaving. I do have all the yarn. It's very seasonal, so I don't always have Jacob yarn. I have some here right now. I don't have any of the roving left. I'm waiting for it to be back from the mill. So anyway, I think I have to be finished unless there's a way to take any questions now.
Thank you so much, Robin. It was a terrific presentation, and I think we all want to go hug a sheep right now.
I wish you could.
And again, Q&A or Thread Talks do not have Q&As, so if you want to reach out to Robin for more information, her information is currently listed on the screen.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Robin. Our second presenter today is Gigi Matthews. Gigi is going to be talking about how to create a yarn using unusable fiber combinations. Take it away, Gigi.
Hello, thank you so much, HGA, for having me on. I just love the idea of these thread talks. And when I found out I got to do one, I was so excited because I'm a spinner and there aren't a lot of us around compared to weavers and knitters. Sometimes I get somebody say to me, oh, you know, I think about spinning sometimes. And I think, go for it, because we're actually in the golden age of spinning. Because if you think about it, for tens of thousands of years, spinners were always restricted to the animals in their region, to the plant fibers in their region. Now I just have to click a few buttons here and suddenly I've got sheep fleece from Sweden, from Gotland's sheep. I've got Mongolian cashmere, goat hair. I can get rare vicuña. I can get plant fibers that I didn't even know existed, like giant Himalayan stinging nettles. I can't even say it, but it's just so fantastic. So if you're ever thinking about spinning, this is really the age of Aquarius for spinners right now. And that's what I'm very excited about with my yarns. I just love all the ingredients that can be used. And that's why I spin with some unusual combinations of fibers. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to restrain myself to just talking about one yarn that has 4 ingredients. So let's have a look at that yarn. I'll just share my screen. And there we go. The yarn is called Blue Jeans on the Beach, and it's right there on the top of my yarn basket. It's made out of reclaimed denim from Blue Jeans manufacturing, flax, which is probably the oldest of all the textile fibers, Lyocell fleece, which is from one of the rarest sheep in the world, and soy, which is one of the so-called new fibers, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. This is a little close-up look. You can see it's a 2-ply yarn. It's basically got the shredded denim mixed with the Lyocell fleece and the flax for one of the yarns, and it's got the flax and soy blended together to make the second yarn and then plied together. And my main consideration when I make yarns with varying materials is that overall they're stable and durable, so that as they're washed and used as a product, they don't fall apart. So that's where the process of carding becomes important. And this is what it looks like when you knit it up. You get sort of a faded jeans type of look. This particular scarf, I used tencel instead of soy. So it has more of a silvery look to it, but you get the idea. It's very sort of faded jeansy. So let's start with the first ingredient, which is the one that probably everybody is the most familiar with, cotton. And as I said, this is reclaimed denim from blue jeans manufacturing. So imagine you have a factory with all the denim rolled out, and you put the pattern down and you cut the blue jeans out and the excess fabric falls to the side. Well, you grab that, you throw it in a fabric shredder, and this is what you get, a whole bunch of different shreds. Now, the thing is, it's cotton. And although cotton is the second most common textile fiber in the world after polyester, it's also not that great for the planet. It's grown in over 80 countries, and it supports the livelihoods of about 350 million people. But in 18 cotton producing countries, including 8 of the top 10 producers, the US Department of Labor, as of 2016, reported the existence of child labor or forced labor in cotton production. Cotton's also mostly grown around the world in semi-arid places, and this worsens the water scarcity in these countries. And 3 of the 10 most hazardous insecticides are commonly used chemicals in growing cotton. It takes about 3/4 of a pound of chemicals to produce enough cotton for your pair of blue jeans. So when you think about buying another pair of blue jeans or even a t-shirt, try to, if you can afford it, organic cotton. I know there's eco-friendly jeans now just starting to come out onto the market. And always look for fair trade organizations. They're often the best way to know that your cotton product is benefiting a community of people rather than causing them misery. So that's kind of a downer. Let's go to something a little bit more upbeat. This is the Ouessant fleece. You're probably wondering about the name. Ouessant is French for meaning like of the West or Westerner. And Ouessant Island is off the coast of France, in with those Channel Islands like Jersey and Guernsey. And these little sheep are from there. And until the mid-1800s, they'd only ever lived on the island of Ouessant. They think that they're probably brought there by Vikings because they're short-tailed sheep and they similar characteristics to the Scandinavian and northern UK breeds. And they have that springiness and that water repellency, but you know, it goes on into the dawn of time. So the great thing about the Ouessant is that it escaped extinction 3 times. In the mid-1800s, French aristocrats saw them. They are the cutest little sheep. They're actually the smallest recognized breed in the world. They're only about 19 inches high, like a dog. And French aristocrats said, oh, I'd love to have these gambling about in my fields next to the chateau. And so they became sort of model sheep. By the late 1800s, they were dwindling and they'd sort of gone extinct on the island itself. But there was a man who rose to the challenge, gathered up sheep from these various chateaus, got the breed going again, and they were fine until he died and they started to dwindle. And then another man took up the cause, got the breed going again, everything was going well, he died, they dwindled. In 1975, finally, a French farmer started contacting other farmers, getting the breed dispersed, got it into the UK, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, and even here in the US. So I think these little sheep are going to make it. And there's an example of their fleece. It's quite a nice staple. You can see the fluffiness. And yeah, so that's kind of the story of a lot of rare breeds. Now this is flax, and everybody knows flax mostly as linen. When I say it's probably the oldest textile fiber in use, it's because Harvard archaeologists from the Peabody Museum found a cave in the Republic of Georgia with 35,000-year-old flax twisted fibers. And some of these fibers had been dyed using local plant dyes. Flax is very strong. We all know linen fabric. I don't really have to go into it. So I'm going to fast forward to today, right here in Brooklyn, New York, where I'm living at the moment. There's an old house on a park, Prospect Park, which is our Brooklyn version of Central Park. And it's an old house dating from when there were Dutch farms all over Brooklyn. And every year, volunteers grow a flax crop. They encourage local people to come in and join, help to harvest it, and even help to process it into fiber. So that's very exciting when you can actually see the plant. It's an incredibly beautiful plant. It's a little bit more close up. And you can see that it really comes out as these long plant fibers that come out of the stem of the flax plant. It's a bast plant, which means that it has the characteristics of trees and plants. So it's got extra strength, and it's just one of my absolute favorite fibers. Now, this is one of the new fibers, and the reason I call them new fibers is based on the production method. So here's soy. This is from soybeans that would have otherwise been trashed from tofu production, from soy milk production, from soybean oil production. Basically, you take the fibers out of the discarded soybean husk and you make a slurry, like a porridge of it, and then you put it through an extrusion process that creates the fiber. So picture Play-Doh, you know, the Play-Doh pasta maker where you put the Play-Doh in and then you squish it down, it comes out like Play-Doh spaghetti. That's essentially how these fibers are made. So the first one was rayon, otherwise known as viscose, in the late 1800s. And that one's not so interesting. I'm going to focus on soy. In the 30s and 40s, Japan and America were creating this particular type of fiber. Henry Ford was particularly excited about it. He actually had a tie made. He had a full suit of clothing made of soy. He had the upholstery done in his Ford cars. But after World War II, cheaper synthetic fabrics such as nylon and polyester held sway. And so nobody really thought about these ones until the early 2000s. And then you start to see things like Lyocell, which is also known as Tencel, C-cell, you know, these types of fibers that you see popping up everywhere now. So they were first promoted as eco-friendly. Are they? They are, in the sense that they're using waste products. So Tencel is, you know, wood chips and wood pulp. However, because they go into that slurry and extrusion process with a lot of chemicals, even if it's a closed loop process, not so eco-friendly. But the jury's still out on these fibers. What I would say to you is that if you can't afford silk, try the soy. It's quite similar. And I also noticed there was a new one of these new fibers coming out of Sweden where the entire process is using all natural, non-toxic ingredients. So it's going to get better over time. So here you can see the soy where you get a bit of that, what it sort of came out of the husk. And that's a really close-up version so you can see the fibers. But when you card them out, you really get a nice silky sort of texture to it. So it's quite lovely. So now I'm back and I'm going to show you how to create the yarn with the different fibers. So I start with a carding comb and I put some Lyocell fleece on it. And this becomes the outside of what will become a fiber sandwich. So after I've kind of spread the fleece evenly, I take some flax and I fan it out so that you get a nice even consistency of fiber. And I simply lay it down on my carder. So there's my other layer of a sandwich. And then I take the shredded denim and just kind of evenly lay it out on top. So there's the meat of my sandwich. What I'm actually doing here is I'm looking at the lengths and the textures of these fibers. So anytime you're using different fiber combinations, think about what are your long fibers, what are your short fibers, what are your sticky fibers, and you're not so sticky. So now I'm going to sandwich these in with another layer of flax and complete the sandwich with another layer of fleece. And then I just card it. And what happens as I card is the flax kind of interlocks itself in with the denim. And the fleece creates a sort of bubble around it all because it's just so springy. And you can do this in a drum carder actually as well, but I find that when I use a drum carder, I kind of need to make several passes of it. And then when you get to the point where you think it's thoroughly mixed in and you don't see any of the bits of denim fluffing out of the mix, just pull it off and have a look at it. And just, you can eyeball the color as your, and you can see if I were to spin that up, I'd actually get a lot of white or cream, and I would get some blue, but not as much as I would like. So then I just simply throw in some more denim. And because I've already got the flax and fleece there, I can just keep on carding it until I get the color blue that I want, and also watching the short fibers, making sure that they're interlocked. So at that point, I can spin this up and I'll get the first yarn of the yarn. It's a 2-ply. For the second yarn, what I would do is take about a 50-50 of flax and soy. I weigh them up so that I know it's even, and then I just card them together. And what you end up is with a sort of sandy colored yarn. The softness and shorter textures of the soy get strengthened by the linen, so that you end up with something that you cannot snap with your hands. It's as strong as linen, flax, but it's got that gentle softness against the skin and that slightly golden color. So you get a lovely sandy color. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what they do in the cooking shows, you know, where they make the casserole and they say, okay, we'll just put this in the oven for 30 minutes, and they put it in the oven, but there's another oven and they pull it out and go, oh, there it is already. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to just spin here on my kiwi, Ashford kiwi, and then, oh, look, here we go. Here's a lovely yarn. So I hope for any of you spinners out there that you're now encouraged to try something different and experiment. And for you non-spinners, if you stayed with me this far, that you give it a go. Because like I said, spinning is in the most exciting time that it's ever been. So thank you so much for letting me present.
Wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Gigi. I definitely want to get some of that blue jeans on the beach yarn. My 2 favorite things, blue jeans and the beach.
Yep.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful presentation on fibers. Our next presenter is Patricia Martin. She will be presenting on All Who Wish May Read, woven through the legacy of Berta Frey.
Hello there. Just making sure I've got everybody going on. There we are. I think everybody needs to stand up, do a 360-degree, maybe several times, because my talk has nothing to do with anything that they've just presented, which makes it very interesting. We got to hear that wonderful talk about Jacob's fleece, and then we got to talk about the mixing of multiple fibers. And now I'm actually going to switch gears, and I'm going to talk about how you think about things. And actually what I need from people is input. So I'm going to share my screen, and then we will go from there. So here we go. And all right. So I wanted to first thank HGA for everything that they've done. And then I want to say, All Who Wish May Read. Woven through the legacy of Berta Frey and investigations by Patricia Martin. This is a quote, All Who Wish May Read, is a quote directly from Berta Frey in a talk about opportunities one can have once one understands how to read the warp and the weft of threads. Berta Frey is one of those gems whose influence created the connections weavers may not know. Her name does not come up for newer weavers, but she is always in the background. She was an inspiration for why I'm here today and the beginning of an adventure I am working on and invite you to join with me. I have known of Berta Frey for many years, and it was an interest in some papers that were handed to me over 20 years ago that is leading the charge for this talk. Berta Frey was born in Texas in 1893. Her introduction to weaving came from working as an occupational therapist in wood and woodworking at the Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C. from 1914 to 1917. Weaving became an interest of hers, but there were no looms to be found. She designed and built one for herself and then for her patients. In this, her influence in loom production is part of another story in the history of weaving, but I will not go into that. She taught herself and her patients to weave, starting with drafts and materials that were available. She then began to develop a style of investigative learning she shared through her inspirational talks, workshops, and organizational activities. She was a woman at the forefront of experimental thinking in weaving. Print articles and lectures for creative endeavors in weaving were a format she utilized. To this end, a mimeographed set of pages got me interested in this project I am about to lay the groundwork for. Because of her inquisitive mind and being self-taught, she was recognized as an accomplished weaver by the time she moved to New York City after World War I. There she opened a studio and taught weaving. In 1940, she was influential in the formation of the New York Handweavers Guild that started out as an informal gathering in her studio. She is known for several publications, including this one, Designing and Drafting for Hand Weavers. It's a basic explanation of reading and designing a weave structure. Most of the information is very, very pertinent for today. Her influence also included several articles and this monograph that reads like a workshop. It identifies several topics and then breaks them down into questions one can use to explore through weaving. One proposed project I have is to have a virtual study following this monograph. If you are interested, please contact me. She was a frequent contributor to Hand Weaver and Craftsman. Her articles appeared in almost every issue and strived for excellence in weaving. Topics such as the kitchen were a mainstay. She toured, she lectured, and she gave inspirational workshops throughout the US. She also credited to Berta Frey is the founding of HGA in 1969. Berta Frey was one of the first organizers and the first board of directors. The stated mission at the time was to inspire creativity and encourage excellence in the fiber arts, and it's probably still today. Berta Frey died just prior to the first convergence in 1972, but she was instrumental in its concept. So we get to thank her. We are very fortunate that much of her personal papers and weaving material were gifted to the Thousand Island Art Center, along with the Woodstock Weavers Guild and the Cooper Hewitt Museum. And this is where my project begins. I am an artist with a toe in the art world and a finger in the weaving world. I teach the introduction of weaving and ongoing investigations in my space, Whispering Vista Studios. Here we work through the basics of structure, color, and thinking behind creative techniques in weaving. My weaving started right after high school. I wove when I should have been studying in college. I participated in workshop groups, guild activities for many, many years. I had an interest in weaving yardage and garments, fine threads especially. At the time, I was raising my family, and then they grew up. I had the opportunity to go to graduate school, and I received my MFA in textiles very recently. I'm showing you my work as color, structure, and the conversation with weavers before me is a topic I dance with frequently. Here is a detail of the color and weave in many shades of wool that can be seen. The completion of the COE in dyeing level 1 always plays an active role in my work. My work has also become sculptural, but still holds the traditions of weaving. This is a colonial overshot piece, not for a bed, but for a different kind of covering. Which brings me back to Berta Frey. I said I was cleaning out those papers in my studio recently, and I did come across those notes I had on her and from her. These are unpublished as far as I can tell, but were notes she used for teaching and lecturing. I have started the inquiries on the notes and working with different individuals and institutions. COVID's really kind of taken a little bit of a side slant on it, but it's amazing how many people have come up with help and information since the beginning. My questions are around Berta Frey, the weaver. What did she have to say to her audience? Does she still influence weavers of today, and do they know it? This project is slated to take 2 years and will investigate the questions along with the reflections and the reactions to her work given trends in the fibers. I'm hoping other weavers will be interested in sharing, weaving, and working from the influences of Berta Frey through her writings, teachings, and periodicals. If you have resources or firsthand experience of Berta Frey, would you please go to my website, patriciamartinartist.com. Look for the tab that says Frey. All thoughts are welcome. Please give me a note, resource, any photographs you may feel contribute. I would like to know how far her influence has reached and what shape it takes. If you'd like to be a part of any of the projects planned, please contact me through that same site. I plan to post regularly on our progress of the projects. Again, thank you for your time. The end.
Thank you so much, Patricia. What a wonderful project.
Very short.
And we wish you all the best on that project. And like Patricia said, please visit her website for more information and connect with her if you want to work with her on this project. Thank you all for joining this hour's Thread Talks. We will see you at 1 p.m. Eastern for our last and final round of Thread Talks this year. See you all then.